Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Longley's Line Podcast. I am your host, Stephen Longley. Remember to like, follow, subscribe on all of the social medias. Stephen Longley for me, Longley's Line for the show, Lightstyle Studio for our studio here. And for those of you that have been around from the jump, you know that we did just audio for a while. And then once we've transitioned over to video, now we are getting all of the earlier guests on that were just the audio. And today is one of those days. I have Mr. Aaron Foster.
How's it going? It's nice to be back.
Good. Thank you for being here.
Stepping up in the world. Audio,
a little
video.
Bit, yeah. You can actually see what's going on now.
Yeah, right. No, it's great.
Before we get rolling into anything we're going to talk about, go ahead and promote social medias, anything you want.
Oh boy, I'm on Instagram, Aaron Charles Foster. I reached out to the guy who's Aaron Foster. He hasn't posted in years. Apparently he's not interested in giving that up.
He doesn't want to give the name up.
Yeah, I am on Twitter technically, officially, as I am Aaron Foster. Oh, X, yes, my apologies.
I know.
I can't imagine I'll stick around there too much longer, and I don't. I scroll and I read. I almost never post.
That's what I do too. I may post something every now and again, but yeah. I'm just on there for like football topics.
Yeah, I have this sort of people that I follow. I feel like it would probably be interesting if you had a lot of followers potentially, then you could like engage and whatnot. But I haven't been a couple times when I've commented on something that had like huge engagement or somebody with a huge amount of followers. Generally goes bad pretty quick.
Yeah, it goes how you think it would.
I don't remember. We probably talked about this. How do you feel about swearing on the podcast?
Oh, you're fine.
Okay, all right. Not that I'm eager to do it, but I do it a lot. And
we click the button.
Think about it or
not for kids.
Okay,
and that's mainly just because people are telling stories, and if you get passionate into it, it's like we're not going to sit there and censor you unless we have to.
Gotcha.
Like, by your discretion, but that's really it.
Hey, remember the thing I said?
Yeah.
No,
well, it turns out I turned it into a reel, so here you go.
Yeah.
But where are you from originally?
I'm originally from East Bay, Concord, born in Berkeley. My parents they met in high school in Mill Valley.
Okay.
My mom's family moved there senior year, and my dad, grew up there. His dad was the town reverend, Mill Valley reverend, and all that. Mm-hmm. Then my dad went to Berkeley, my mom went to Davis, and then they got married sophomore year of college, freshman year of college. I can't remember all this. Anyway, I had my brother, 19, and then me a couple years later. So
nice.
And I grew up out there, and then high school over in Marin County, UC Davis College, and I have since done 4 to 5 years in Atlanta, LA, Boulder, and now Reno. When
you were growing up down there in high school, did you think you wanted to be an actor right then, or did you have any kind of different aspirations?
I think I thought about it. I was way too shy. I mean, I was too shy to even go out like for the school play.
Yeah.
I remember watching it it was a musical, so if you weren't one of the 6 people, you were in the chorus.
Right.
And I remember just, I wish I was doing that part.
Yeah.
But also, I can't sing, and I would never have gone out for the audition anyway.
Right. It's like, get up here, tone deaf. I'm like, all right, I'm coming.
Yeah, we were, again, that was 6th grade, I think. Nobody could sing, probably. But, yeah, there's no way. And I think the first time I really decided, didn't decide, but Stand By Me was really the thing that made me want to be an actor.
Okay. Was it anything particular or just the entire movie?
I mean, the entire movie, because I was basically the same age, 12. Mm-hmm. But there's a moment in it, I've talked about this before, but River Phoenix breaks down, crying. He says, I just want to go someplace where nobody knows me. And he's the tough guy, And I was like, I feel like that. I didn't know anyone else felt that way.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like, I didn't process it all at the time, I think, completely, but it's kind of like, I feel a little bit less alone. And I think some aspect of like, I wonder if maybe I could do that for somebody else someday, tell the story and somebody can identify with or something like that. I mean, again, I'm all retrospecting and sort of, writing a little bit maybe more of a clever story than there was in the moment, but there was just something like, I want to do that. And I had no idea, and again, was super shy. I did mention it to my dad once, and never came up again from either one of us.
Because you think about it in the past, you're like, oh yeah, there's this really nice story of me seeing this movie, and then I decided, I'm going to do that for somebody else. But then actually you see this movie and you're like, that seems pretty cool. And then you try it, and then thinking back, because I do the same thing. I was
Right.
like, one of my first movies was like Tommy Boy.
Okay, sure.
And I loved Chris Farley, his aspect where he was just this funny guy who also made you feel things for him. And then I gravitated towards that,
Right.
like Nobody's Business. And then I was like, well, looks like I like being in front of the camera, I guess.
Yeah.
And then I found that out in high school.
Yeah, I was, again, then that was 12. Never did anything about it until I was, I think, 32 when I finally moved to LA.
Really?
Yeah,
So,
never been on stage, terrified of public speaking, took an F every quarter in high school, English class where you had to give a speech. It was just like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'll take the F, I'll make it up in the essay or whatever.
Didn't feel the need to, yeah.
It's just like, I know it's not going to hurt me that bad, and that's how much I don't want to do it. I mean, in retrospect, man, with this sort of, it's like probably would have made my high school a little better. But, well, yeah, now I have a different like, I should have said this, and I could have cracked jokes. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, no, you couldn't have, because you were too shy.
You were shy
Too
and didn't know
afraid.
what to say.
Yeah, so.
As you're thinking about it in the shower, like, man, I should have done that.
Yeah, I mean, like you do an audition, you drive home. I should have said this. Like I have this of 30, 32 years ago or whatever. Like, oh man, I should have done this. Like, well,
Yeah.
take it easy, let it go.
Think about that regularly. You just, I should have. Huh? I didn't.
Yeah,
It happens.
I mean, and so I try to live with the well, better late than never.
Yeah. And between those high school periods, what did you do after high school, pretty much?
I went to college. I studied history and political science at Davis, and then I got my first gig out of college was a high school teacher, well, substitute high school teacher, which is calling yourself a teacher when you're a substitute is kind of like calling yourself a firefighter when you're a Dalmatian. It's
Right.
like, there's a little bit of overlap there, but not
Yeah.
a lot. It was really babysitting, And I was 23 and I looked like I was 12, so that presented some challenges of its own.
So that didn't help. Where they're like, why are you?
Yeah, and it was kind of like, oh, I'll get my teaching credential, but I'll do this for a year. I'll be a sub for a year, and by the end of that year, I was like, I don't want any part of this world.
While you were
which is two
doing-
different jobs, but
Yeah.
It
When
does,
you were
yeah.
doing the subbing, did you said get the teaching credits. Did you want to be a full-blown like history teacher, or
that was the plan. Yeah,
That was
that
the
was. I mean, but it wasn't the plan. It was just a plan. It was kind of the only plan I had come up with at that point.
right?
I mean, a little bit of that sort of, summers off. And not that I thought it would be an easy job, but it just sort of, the kind of standard 9 to 5, even at that point, didn't really click with me. Of like,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a good idea for me. But, so I did that for a year and then decided, like, all right, well, maybe I'll become like a college teacher. I'll go get a master's in history. I went to San Jose State for like a week and I was like, this is a bad idea.
Maybe
Like,
not.
this is a bad idea. Take on some more loans to get a master's in history, which doesn't exactly make you super employable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I bailed on that pretty quick, which at least it didn't end up costing me too much.
Right. Did you have a game plan after that had happened?
I really didn't. No, I mean, it's funny. I think about it now. Like, was for the very first time, my sort of college loan debt kind of hit me. It never really had bothered me before, and suddenly it really started bothering me. So it's like I got to get a job, and it was $20,000, which now seems kind of silly with
Yeah.
what kids are
What it
taking
could
on
be
these
now.
days.
Yeah.
And for UC Davis, which is pretty good school and all that. I mean, it wasn't any private Ivy League or anything. So I didn't have a plan, and I just kind of figured I got to get a job, and not thinking of a career, just like I got to pay the rent.
Yeah.
And I ended up at working the office of a very small wholesale home furnishings sales rep company, which at the time may be similar to what you're thinking now. What the fuck is that?
A little
I didn't
bit,
know,
yeah.
but it was it was basically one guy in an office, and he had a showroom in LA. This was in the Bay Area, and a year later started my own business with a business partner doing that same thing, and learned that.
And what did that entail, really?
So yeah, as a wholesale sales rep, we would represent 24 companies at any given time that made, like, one company that made furniture, and a company that made lamps, and a company that made wall art, and a company that made pillows, and a company that made jewelry or, whatever it might be. So sort of a whole collection that all kind of went well together that would look like, oh, this kind of looks like somebody's house or something.
Gotcha.
And it was a little bit of a new thing in that industry at the time, I think, whereas normally it would be like, we have 800 lamps, that's what we sell.
Yeah.
Whereas like, no, this is a little bit of everything. The idea being these sort of mostly smaller stores would come in and be like, oh, this is what I want my store to look at. We'll buy everything. So we would earn a commission on sales. We didn't actually, make anything. And we did great. We carved out a little niche for ourselves, representing these kind of smaller, more artistic vendors. And we did that for about 4 or 5 years in Atlanta. And then that led to my artwork, which I made a piece for my business partner. And she was like, you should sell this in the showroom. I was like, what are you talking about? I'm not making another one. First of all, who am I to sell art for money?
Yeah.
Second of all, that was not that much fun to make. I don't want to make another one. And, here we are 23 years later, and I'm still making them. And that's been, the vast majority of my certainly income career. I've done a bunch of other stuff, but that's how I've made a living, and that's how I've paid for everything that I've done, really.
Those that don't know, what kind of artwork is it?
So, it's all made out of old license plates. And the first piece I did was a map of the United States. So every state is cut out of that state's license plate, usually from sort of 60s, 70s, 80s, because they're really colorful. And it just hit. It just hit and took off and exploded. And I've been doing it ever since.
Do you have a favorite piece that stuck out to you?
I mean, there's different kinds of favorites. The U.S. map has outsold every other piece I've made combined. And so financially, that's my favorite piece, because that has provided my life for the last 20 plus years.
Keeps the paychecks coming in.
Yeah, and other stuff, I don't know. Anytime you make something like a new design for the first time, it's kind of cool. And you work, it's collage, it's mixed media, I think is the official name. And you sort of have an idea and you put everything together. And when you're standing right there, it doesn't always look like much. You sort of kind of have to hang it on the wall and turn around, walk away and turn back, and then it kind of pops, and sometimes it doesn't. But in the last couple of years, things have kind of gone to a different level with doing these kind of, I guess, portraits almost, but like, and then slightly three-dimensional, of like Albert Einstein and Marilyn Monroe and John Wayne and stuff like that. That are sort of those are pretty fun pieces. Yeah.
Aside from favorite, do you have any odd ones that have stood out to you?
I've done a lot of custom stuff over the years. Somebody wanted the Saab logo.
Okay.
Which maybe not super odd, but a little odd. I did the In-N-Out logo for somebody once.
Okay. It's pretty popular for those that aren't from like the West Coast area that aren't accustomed to it. Like I've got friends that are on the East Coast that are like, every time we're in the West Coast, we got to get In-N-Out. So
yeah, I don't want to get into a whole thing. I don't want to upset anybody, but I don't get it. I don't understand.
We'll put a trigger warning. Don't worry.
Every time I drive by there, I'm like, it's not that good. I don't understand what you guys are doing, waiting in line for half an hour.
This is going to start a riot. Sound off in the comments what you think. Go ahead.
And look, and I think the argument of like it's the best fast food burger is, so what?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a little bit of a food snob, and I'm a cook, and I've owned a restaurant and stuff, so there's that. But like, being better than McDonald's is not exactly a claim to fame.
Yeah.
But I mean, I love their business model. We make 6 things, and I think that's great.
And they don't ever change it. My wife, she worked for In-N-Out for like 11 some odd years.
Lots of trouble.
Yeah, so you'll be getting a phone call. But she worked for them for about 11 years, so knows the facets inside and out. And she says exactly that. Like people come in with the secret menu and everything, but you will still get so many people that'll come through the drive-thru. Can we get some chicken nuggets?
Right.
It's like, where do you see chicken nuggets?
I mean, it's insane there. That's the nature of the restaurant business, because like I said, I have had two small restaurants of my own with very limited menus, and people just
can't accept it.
And it's like, if it's not on the menu, it's not on the menu. That was kind of my policy. Although you try to say it with a smile and not a grimace, but
which is
I don't see gluten-free pizza on the menu. Yeah, there's a reason for that.
It's not on the menu.
I have nothing against it, but once you start to offer too many options, you're just not doing things well.
Yeah, we're not
by and
making
large.
it. Yeah. Sorry. And so you get the art started.
Yeah.
As you're kind of riding that train, do you just pursue that full time, or is that kind of when the chef aspect comes into
No, the
things?
chef aspect was much later. So I made the first map just Christmas 2001, sold a few the next 12 months, and then Sundance Catalog picked it up.
Nice.
And that landed January of 2003. I had left Atlanta. I was living in Chico, of all places, which is a whole other story. And I was starting a wholesale lamp company.
Okay.
Because that seemed like a potentially profitable niche of that market that I now knew a little bit about.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, maybe I'll sell one of these maps every once in a while. Sundance Catalog drops. My fax machine, 2003, wakes me up in the morning just spitting out pages. I'm like, what? Finally I get up. I think they sold maybe 12 or 13 the first day.
Wow.
And they had said, like, we'll probably sell 4 or 5 over the course of 6 months. Because it's expensive and kind of unique and you know, very, like, how many people are going to want this thing? It was good timing. It was a unique thing. It was sort of relatively post 9/11, so people were very America, but it wasn't like super rah America to a certain extent. Anyway, I called him. I was like, what's going on? Like, I don't know, how am I going to make these? I had no idea how I was going to make that many.
Yeah.
And they're like, we don't know what's going on, but you better get your shit together. Because this is the first day.
Yeah.
So they ended up selling, I think, maybe 65 or 70 in the first 3 or 4 months. And so that day I hired 2 college kids at Chico, called up the guy I had bought 200 license plates from, and was like, I'm going to need a lot more. I still do business with that guy today. It's been 20 plus years.
And does he just collect them and then
he's a dealer, he's a collector, and he's a dealer, and there's a whole community there's a automobile license plate collectors of America. There's a huge group of these largely older white men who that's what they do, and sometimes they get mad at me for cutting up license plates, and I'm like, it is what it is.
They're mine now. I bought them.
I mean, in retrospect, with the price of license plates now, if I had just bought all the license plates that I've bought over the years and stuck them in a closet, I could probably sell them and make the same amount of money I made from my art business. But
now they're vintage.
It is what it is. Yeah. I mean, plates I used to get for $1 now might be $5, and plates some plates are 10 or 12, and it's kind of gotten ridiculous.
Yeah.
So,
and then as it's rolling, you kind of have a staff and everything. After those first couple of months, when it starts to kind of slow down a little, do you think now I'll dive into more custom stuff? Maybe I'll do something different?
Yeah, somebody at some point said, what else do you make? And I was like, I mean, I can't draw, I can't paint, sculpture, I can't do any of that stuff. I was like, I don't make anything else. And so then I started playing around and trying to figure out where to. So I have some photos of the really early stuff, just like a small little sort of flower of which 4 pieces of license plate cut together. Things like that did sort of okay. And then, it's labor intensive, and so it's small. It's hard to sort of sell it for a decent amount of money, and kind of I had 2 times when I learned bigger is better, and sort of rich people are always going to be rich, and it's a good customer base, especially when you're a small company. So I started doing the first couple pieces I did like a Cobra car. That's all I know about, this sort of convertible with the kind of a Cobra race car thing, and I did like a cowboy playing guitar. Just these really simple clip art images that I would find online and blow up and kind of trace and reverse engineer into these cool pieces. And people really liked it. Like, oh, I like that car, and I'm from Tennessee. Can you make it out of Tennessee plates? Yeah, sure. So it was a lot of customization available to that. Or my dad plays guitar and he lives in Texas. Like, oh, we'll give him a Texas hat, or whatever, stuff like that. But the map was always far and away, outsold everything else I've ever made.
Item.
Yeah. It's one of those things. It's hard to put it this way without sounding like an asshole, but it's a brilliant idea, but it's also so obvious. That it's just kind of. And it's funny because I used to do these shows, and you'd see these people, and it almost always was the husbands of these women that had stores, and their husbands were sort of drug along to these wholesale furniture shows, and clearly don't want to be there. And you can kind of see them processing, I think I can do that. And I'd be like, here's my number. When you get halfway done, call me and tell me how it's going.
I'll walk you through some of it.
I make a lot of them, and it's not super fun. But the first one is really no fun.
Yeah. I think that's a business mindset.
Yeah.
That everybody has, where it's like, oh, why didn't I think of that? It's so simple. That's the simplest thing. I could have just easily made that, or you have a random idea pop into your head and it's like, why has nobody thought of that?
Yeah.
Man, I'm going to make so much money. And then you look online.
Start exploring, and
Shit.
either there's a lot of people doing it, or you're like, oh, the machines to do that, or whatever. And it's funny, the USA map is the thing, because I'm in these sort of Facebook license plate groups, and there's a lot of these collectors and crafters that make birdhouses and signs and things like that. That's what a lot of them do that. Like, oh, I made my map. I finally made my USA map, because it's just such a ubiquitous sort of thing that rings true for a lot of people. So I did that in Chico for a year, and then that was when it hit me. Like, I was 32, I think. It was kind of like acting. You have this gig that pays well, that you could travel with. You don't have to move down, have 5 roommates, and be a waiter and all that kind of stuff. And so I up and moved to LA and rented a house that had a little detached garage, and took over a lease from Christina Hendricks. Before she was Christina Hendricks, but before Mad Men and all that.
Yeah,
I met her.
Love her.
Yeah, she's amazing. Very nice. Her and her then fiance, who was
from
your wife
Super
knows her?
Troopers. No, but she knows that I love her.
Oh, okay,
so
sure.
It's one of those.
So on your list.
Yeah, she sees her and she's like,
very nice. And she was engaged to a guy named Tom Irwin, who popped over to my house when I first moved in. I took over their lease. They moved like 4 blocks over.
Was he the one who was on Super Troopers?
I don't know about Super Troopers, but you would recognize him. He's been in everything. So this is what happened. He came over. So first of all, I moved in. They moved to 4 blocks over, and I said, "Hey, there's," and somebody knocked on the door. First night I was there, a delivery service, courier service, with an envelope with a film script in it. I was like, "Is this how this works? This is great. I've been here an hour and a half. Great." It was for Tom, who's a legitimate actor, and not that Google wasn't a thing, but I didn't look it up. I just said, hey, somebody just dropped off something. So she's like, oh, I'll send my fiance over. I opened the door and I was like, you were in Midnight Run. He's like, yeah, that was a long time ago. I was like, it's a great fucking movie.
Sorry, I like it.
So he was one of the 2 FBI guys in that, the dark-haired one. He played the dad on My So-Called Life, if you remember that show. And he's one of these guys. He's done an episode of everything, and
gotcha.
One of those guys, sort of like character actors, like working actors, like super legit. So that was a pretty cool first couple nights in LA, and they had me over for a party a few weeks later, and it's like, I know all these people, like not A-listers, but like. Just
one of
everybody
those you've seen
them everywhere.
Yeah.
So that was cool, and started acting class and did all that. Yeah.
What was it that made you want to pursue that, aside from you're doing well, like you're doing just fine?
Yeah.
Was it always in the back of your head? It was like, maybe I want to give acting a shot.
Yeah.
Did you see something else? Were you scrolling through the channels and Stand By Me came on and you were like, wait a minute?
No, I fell in love with movies as a kid, and that has stuck with me my whole life. And there's something about it that is, I don't know. It's a 2-hour escape. I think that's part of it. If it's a good movie.
Yeah.
If you're half hour in and you're thinking about, whatever, you got to clean your kitchen or something, that's not a good sign. But it's 2 hours another world, and then, it's a pretty common theme of movies of that some character in there sort of feels isolated, feels like they don't fit in, feels like they want something more. There's all that. So I don't 80% of movies have that, if not more, in some way. So I think there's a lot of that, like, seeing that role play out, and then a lot of times seeing those people win and get what they want,
Yeah.
sort of like, and a little bit of like I'm still pretty introverted to a certain extent. I think it's more situational now. There's some places where I'm not so much, but I think there was a certain amount of like, oh, maybe I can pretend to be those. Maybe I can pretend to sort of break out of my shell and have the the Bill Murray, it just doesn't matter moment. Like, I'm never going to do that in my life.
Yeah.
But if it's in the script and everyone's like kind of cool with it, and I'm not going to do it in my life because it might not work.
Yeah.
Right? I'm afraid of that. And I'm trying to work through that, and now I'm doing stand-up and stuff, and I had a really kind of let myself down actually on Sunday night, which because I didn't take the big swing. I kind of took the safe call, and I'm a little grumpy with myself about that. But yeah, I think it was just this idea of it really was something I always thought that I might be good at. I didn't know. There's no reason that I thought that, but I think I have a couple friends of mine that joke with me about this, of like, and this is probably true for everybody, but obviously I only know my own experience. Like, I feel like I'm always acting.
Yeah.
I'm always, I don't want to say I'm always pretending, but I mean, you know, you analyze the situation. How should I respond to this? That's going to make this person like me or not like me, or, you know, what going to help me get what I want. And I mean, that's kind of what acting is. You know, there's a lot of like, acting's lying. And it's like, yeah, it kind of is, but kind of isn't. And I think the craft can be overanalyzed. I just called it the craft, so I'm an overanalyzing douchebag already. But I don't know. There's such a fine line to it that you know, good acting is so amazing and bad acting is just so horrific. Like,
yeah, and it comes with everyday life things too, where it's just something as simple as being able to read the room, or knowing that, oh, maybe I see that person's striving for attention. Yeah. Oh, okay, I'll be over here. Or if we say X, Y, and Z, then maybe you can get in there. And it's just putting on some type of persona, even if it's ingenuine, while also being genuine, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I think most of us operate like we have our center baseline, whatever that might be. And, you know, most of us probably, well, I'm going to move 10 points this way or 10 points that way. And that's about probably what most people do in real life. But then you get a little bit more leeway as an actor. You can go further, and it's safe to a certain extent. Yeah. Oh, it says it says right here I can yell at them. Or I made the choice to yell at them, whether it's in the script or not. But there's a little bit of an out.
Yeah, like this is what's going on. You know, I'm going to try this.
Yeah, I mean, I think thinking about this now, I think I probably to a certain extent have this in real life, but and I don't have this fear of acting anymore. But when I lived in LA, I always worried. This is my biggest fear, which is preposterous, especially as an actor, that I would get like a real gig. You know, like the biggest audition I ever had was for a guest spot on Desperate Housewives. Also the worst audition I ever gave in my life. But in my head, I was like, what if I get there, if I get the part, and I show up on like set on the lot? I mean, that's a legitimate, one of the biggest shows on TV at the time. You know, action, do your thing, hit your mark, say your line, cut. What are you doing? Like, acting? I don't think so, buddy. That was always like, it's like, that's not going to happen. Yeah. You know, one of your whatever. They'll adjust you. They'll tell you to do it again, you know? I mean, you're not going to get 50 takes, but yeah, I used to really worry about that of just like, I have a pretty significant fear of sort of doing it wrong.
I think that's a common fear for most actors when it comes in. You're just like, all right, I'm coming in, I'm doing my scene, and I'm doing the best I can. And in the back of your head, they just look at you like, did you even read the script? Yeah. What do you do? Like they have I think it's a Geico commercial or something that came out now where they're at the airport and the guy's holding his shoes and he goes walking past the TSA agent and she goes, all right, have a safe flight. And he goes, okay, you too. Yeah. And everything stops and they're like, you too? Yeah. Does it look like I'm going on a flight? Right. God, this guy's an idiot. You're just like, worst nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a big block for me of sort of, I guess embarrassing myself. Which, right, you learn these things for whatever reason as a kid. These methods of getting through life, getting through your childhood, your sort of family of origin, as we call it in therapy, that protect you as a kid, right? And then they stick with you as an adult, and they don't help you anymore. Yeah, but they're hard to get rid of. You know,
yeah, extremely hard.
Yeah.
To go back so. Your first couple of nights there, you already schmoozing with a couple of relatively successful actors. Yeah. And then you take an acting class.
Yeah, then I got into acting class probably a month or so later, and then, you know, sort of reality starts to set in and had some success, had some not success, and moments of like, can I get out of this room without, you know, having to have a conversation about it and never come back again? Yeah. So yeah, and then finding finally getting comfortable in that acting class and that acting school, and then getting to the point where like I know I've done good work in here, I know they know I can act, and then so if you shit the bed in a scene, like not getting destroyed over it, not sort of, you know, wanting to run away forever and stuff like that, and that's a common thing for me of I think it's one of the reasons I really struggled with auditions so much back then of like. I've known these people for 9 seconds. You know, they don't know and they wouldn't care that like I had this great scene in class last night. Who gives a
Yeah.
shit, right? That doesn't matter.
We're auditioning.
This is a
20
different
other people.
thing. Yeah, 20, if not 200. You
Yeah.
know. So there's, I think maybe just sort of felt like a lack of a safety net of like, if I screwed this up, they're gonna know I screwed it up, rather than like, oh, he screwed that up, but we know he's good. Let's give him, you know, or something like that. So just way too in my head and all that kind of stuff. This is really one of the. I mean, I'm a huge stand-up comedy fan. I have been my whole life, but that was one of the reasons I started doing stand-up in LA back in '09. Of just like, I think that'll make me better, kind of in the room and in the moment and all that kind of stuff. And it did, and I think also just I'm. You know, I'm 51 now. I have a lot less, like, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah. And the other part, when it comes to stand-up, you've got to get in front of strangers.
Yeah, that was it's a big challenge, and I just had a pretty big weekend of it for me. I did 4 shows in San Francisco, around the Bay Area. This San Francisco comedy competition, which is it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, when they said like, yeah, you got in, I was like, are you sure?
Me?
And every comic I talked to there, which was, I mean, I talked to everybody a little bit, but, you know, and not to like, I'm not patting myself on the back. I mean, I did it for 6 months in 2009 in LA. I did 10 shows, maybe.
Sure.
And I've done, you know, I don't know, a dozen since April when I started again. So the fact that I got into this thing was a little bit, it was fantastic. But every comic, they're like, what are you talking about? Like, you know, this guy's been doing 12 years. He's been doing 7. You know, one guy was like, I've been doing it 2 years. But, and, you know, the results, you know, they went the way you would probably think they would. Like, I didn't do great. You know, I had one really good show. I had one, like, kind of okay show. And I had 2, well, I had 2, like, pretty good shows. And one great one and one really bad one. But, you know, never cracked the top 5 in terms of scores and all that stuff. And comedy's subjective, and I do a lot of stuff about depression and anxiety, which, you know, at Friday night at the bar in Santa Cruz, you know, at 11 o'clock is not necessarily what people want to, but that's the gig,
right?
You know, and you can only do what you can do. So there's a certain amount of like, if my first 2 jokes don't hit, it's like, I mean, I got plenty more jokes, but they're all, you know, in this vein to a certain extent.
You guys better buckle up, because there's going to be a lot more of this.
I can't switch to airline peanuts or, you know, whatever. It's sort of, but it was very educational. You know, it definitely didn't. I would have loved to have sort of advanced to the next round, but it didn't happen.
Of course.
But it was. I learned a lot. In
a lot of
4
the
shows.
Stand-ups, because I listen to a lot of stand-up podcasts, you know.
Yeah, so do I, yeah.
So I listen to a whole bunch of them, and a lot of the times you'll hear from these guys who are now successful that are doing shows, going all over the country, getting all of these big spots or theaters or something. And when they talk into it, they're just like, oh, yeah, I've been doing it for 13, 14, 15 some odd years. And they're like, oh, you just got started.
Yeah, it's that's part of the sort of anxiety of the whole thing of like knowing really how long it really takes.
Yeah.
And then being 51. And I mean, you know, same thing with acting, same thing with anything. Like, you just, I mean, I wasn't even young when I moved to LA. I was 32, which is, you know, I mean, I was the oldest guy in my acting class usually, maybe one other person or whatever. But it's sort of, you can really wrap your brain around like how long it really takes. And my buddy Maddie Carter-Opel, who people would totally recognize, he's been on Stranger Things and Series of Unfortunate Events. He does tons of commercials. He's 6'7". He's a very unique guy. So he's a great character actor. But when he first started to break, I was in LA. I had left years before. I was there. We were having lunch. We did our first acting scene together, you know, back in 2005, I guess. And he got a part in Jurassic World.
Oh,
one of the ride operators. He's got 2 great lines, and that's his thing. He shows up, he nails like 2 lines, and then he's out, you know. And I was like, how'd you do it, man? Like, you figured it out. He's like, I've been here for 12 years. I was like, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bailed on 5, you know.
That one line that you always hear, it's like, you're going to get 1,000 no's before you even get maybe 1 yes.
Yeah.
Or even a, sure.
Yeah, and you know, obviously some people, you know, get hired off the street, and there's all these sort of overnight stories. There's not a lot of them, and most of the overnight stories are 10 years long. But there's also this aspect that you don't know. I didn't know anything when I moved there, of like, even this Desperate Housewives audition that I did have, that I kind of finagled, it was like a friend of a friend, and I saw the part in the breakdown. I'm like, I could play that part.
Yeah.
And if it had been in my acting class, yeah, I could have walked in and nailed it. But like, this is on the lot. I've never been on the lot before. This is like one of these little studios of a, somebody's little office on the, whatever, I don't know, ABC lot or Sony, whatever it was. And like, this is like a real thing. And,
completely different animal.
And not to say, I don't know this for sure, but even if I had knocked that out of the park, there's a good chance to be like, we don't know this fucking guy.
Yeah.
We got 80 guys that have done this 1,000 times. Get one of them.
Yeah, like
too much.
It's
too much at stake.
They've all been corpses, so
yeah.
we know they can do it.
Yeah, it's like we're gonna get this guy out there, and then if he doesn't nail it, then we got to recast. We got to stop the whole day. Blah 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 blah. And I think there's a certain amount of like those people who make those decisions need to see you nail the audition a bunch of times before they'll give you the next step. And obviously there's exceptions, and I don't mean that in a sour grapes way at all. It's just you sort of start to learn the reality of who gets those parts and what it really takes.
Yeah, because then the other big thing that comes with acting that isn't as broadcasted as just nailing an audition or being good or something, it all comes with networking. So like how you were kind of saying too, these people don't know me.
Yeah.
This is my first time auditioning for them. But then if you get in front of them or see them again, or then, X, Y, and Z recommended me for this. And then all of a sudden now they're like, all right, let's give him a shot.
Yeah, I think this is sort of always my theory of like nobody wants to pay you to do something that someone else hasn't already paid you to do. Like nobody wants to be first to like hire you on and take that chance, and because it's such a pain if it doesn't work out, right? Yeah. Especially if it's like there's not that many sitcoms anymore, but if you have a 5-day shoot and you're screwing up on Wednesday afternoon and they got to shoot it Friday night, like, we got to find another guy, we got to do this. And, so there's a lot, there's just so much more to it. One class that I took, I went back to LA. I left in 2009. I went back in maybe 2015. Thought I'd give it another shot. I didn't last very long. I was having some other issues too, but took this great audition class where they'd break you in half. Half of you would go out and kind of come in and audition. And half of they'd be like, you're the writer, you're the director, you're the producer, you're the studio, you're the whatever. And they would sort of like, everybody looks at it through a different lens. Yeah. The studio's like, well, is this person gonna play, in Asia, in Europe, and like whatever, And that's for leads, obviously. That's not for, guest stars or whatever. But it was a really eye-opening way to sort of think about all this other stuff. Like, talent's part of it, but it sure isn't all of it. Yeah. And again, that's not a sour grapes thing. Like, the thing is the thing, and the job is the job, Yeah,
you could have had the best performance all day, but because they're looking for maybe somebody with a buzz cut. Or
you might be too, and you also might be, well, we already cast the lead and he's too short. He can't play off, or we already play, like the female lead is 6 feet, so like not going to work. Yeah. Or whatever. Tom Cruise gets away with it, but he's Tom Cruise,
Yeah, it's camera angles. Just see him running.
It's boxes and
it's like he's running, he looks 6 feet, it's fine.
I think, so, there's a lot of things that you just don't know that stuff when you start out. You just think like, I'm good, and I'm in this real acting class where they take it seriously and we're doing the work. And it's like, that's great. Do you know how to audition? Yeah. No, they never taught that. Do you know like your eye lines when you're on camera? Like, no, like, the school I went to was really taught you how to be a theater actor. And I think they were good at it. Taught me how to like understand a scene and break it down and really understand what's going on. But I think about any audition that I would have done early on that's on camera, I was like, probably look like I was on crack, understand the stillness. Yeah, because you don't have a conversation like this and look someone directly in the eye and not blink in real life, because that's fucking creepy. Yeah, but
please stop.
Looks great on camera.
Yeah, because then all they're doing is just staring the entire time, and you're like, well, that's how it's supposed to look from here. Yeah. And then that's why you see a lot of times like the little tips and tricks. It's like when you're talking with somebody, you look them in the ear, or the bridge of the nose, or something.
Yeah. Depending on where the camera is and all that stuff that I didn't learn at all when I was first there from this acting school that I went to, which I'm still a little grumpy about. It's like, what are you guys doing? Nobody. Doing theater's great. I love it, but nobody is here to do that.
We're in LA, not New York.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not what anybody in this room wants to be great at, Yeah. They want to work, and for good or ill, maybe whatever, however you want to call it. But so when I went back in 2015, whatever it was, it was a school that taught you how to get a job, and it was very eye-opening.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then so you go back there for a little bit, come back, and to maybe jump to nowish, you did stand up early on.
A very brief time in LA, 6 months.
And then decided to start up again in April.
Yeah, I kind of got back in with a couple people that I did back then that have like a writing group, and then a bunch of new people, and wrote with them for about 3 months, and then we all did a show in April, and I had a great show. I had a great set, and really felt like, I don't know, there's something about that night that was just really magical in those, 7.5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I was very present, and like I said, it just like everything went over great. I mean, I'm not sure I've had that good of a set since. Saturday night I did these 4 shows. The one really good show that I had in this last weekend was pretty close. And I went about it a lot differently this time, and talking about just being very personal. And I talk about depression, I talk about anxiety, and I talk about issues with my father, issues with my brother, who are both passed away, and that's another thing that doesn't always. That's not great when it's Laughs Unlimited in Sacramento and it's midnight on Saturday.
Yeah, everyone's hammered,
and you're like, what did he just say? I mean, and it's tricky because my writing group, they know me, and they're comics, and comics have a certain different kind of way of thinking this, but and they're like, you got to do that joke. I'm like, do I? Is that gonna fly? It's sort of like, I grew up with an older brother, and we both grew up with an abusive father, which isn't really that funny. And like sometimes that gets a huge laugh, and sometimes people are just like, "What? What's going on?" Like, and I have better jokes than that. But
it's the same thing when it comes to comics. They all have those premises.
Yeah.
Like one of the shows that I watch is We Might Be Drunk.
Okay.
And one of the things that they do is it's 2 comics that are just chatting, because they're buddies. So they do a peeve, recommendation, and then they run bits by each other.
Okay, sure.
And a lot of the times, their bits, they'll even preface it by saying, "This is new, so we'll see what happens."
Right, yeah.
And then they're like, it was walking down the subway, and then I saw the wrapper of chocolate, and then they like go into something else. And it's like, I think we can build off that if you add this or you do that.
Yeah, it's fun to there's Mike Birbiglia does that on his show once in a while. Not quite as much as I'd like for a show that's called Working It Out. That's supposed to be about working out jokes, but they do it. That's always fascinating, and I love seeing comics. Gary Gulman's one of my favorite comics. I saw him in Grass Valley back in the spring, I think it was. And I think he taped his special maybe 2 or 3 months later. So it was pretty polished, but there was clearly not finished. And so it's really fascinating to see that stuff in progress. I also saw Neil Brennan do a new material show, and it was like, this is not that new because this is really good.
Yeah, he's already got it pretty polished.
If you wrote that today, then that's I got to retire. But I can't
the Ferrari out of the garage. No, I still need to polish it. It's a Ferrari.
It's pretty good. But those guys have been doing it forever, and you start to realize and I realized this weekend of these watching some of these other comics on this San Francisco contest thing, like there's the whole thing, obviously your material and how funny it is, but there's that last 8% of just stage presence, and I'm an actor. I feel like I have pretty good stage presence, but but I know it deteriorates. It's a lot better when people are laughing than when they're not laughing. That's for sure.
Yeah, because then you've got to.
It's just start to. I don't have the reps. I mean. Yeah. The first night, Friday night, was this private club in San Francisco. So it's a bunch of super rich people, and plenty of the comics had great sets. So the fact that people were I got like half the laughs I would want. Like, it's on me or my material, whatever. I mean, I did the exact same set the next night and had a great set.
Yeah,
So, so for whatever reason, but as it starts to go south, you start to get in your head a little bit because I'm like, oh, I'm bombing the show, or it's not going well. I've only done this 20 times. You've done it 1,000 times before. It's like, whatever.
Yeah.
I just don't have the reps.
Yeah.
I don't have the thick skin.
You have to know and then keep it going. And that's kind of when it comes with acting too. If you're not doing it ever so often, then as soon as a camera gets in front of your face, you're like, wait, how am I supposed to look into it? You know, like,
yeah, I mean, the 10,000 hours thing is, you know, whether it needs to be 10,000 or 1,000, you know, whatever it is, it's the more the better with this kind of stuff. And the more second nature everything is, the better it's going to come across. And I found when I did get the one sort of big gig that I did have hosting a show for HGTV, you know, this is 2006 probably. They flew me out to Minneapolis to shoot the pilot, and I was like, well, this is great. This is a cool thing. I'd been in LA less than a year. I was like, I got my own show. I just figured I'd get fired during the pilot.
Sure.
Because I was like, I don't know how to do this. I'm not a host personality per se. I'm not a big energy guy. But I'm like, well, this will be cool until they fire me. And then there's just something about the action. I mean, it's such an annoying thing to say, like, I live between action and cut. Like, I don't know about that. But it's very freeing for whatever reason for me.
Yeah.
And I can bring my energy up, and I can sort of take a little bit more chances than I kind of do in real life for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And it worked out great. You know, I was better than I expected to be at it. Let's put it that way, without, you know. So that's interesting, and I feel that way about just kind of acting in general.
Yeah, come in with low expectations, but leave with them being met.
Yeah, and I'm such a perfectionist, and I don't mean that as a compliment to myself. It's a huge hindrance in my life in general.
Right.
But it comes from a fear of failure and a fear of public embarrassment.
Yeah.
So for acting, I mean, I'll rehearse the scene, you know, whatever by myself. I tape myself. I'll do whatever I have to do so that when I do walk on, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
And you know, and then I'm much more ready to. And then I can make adjustments. And if I mean, it's like you see Brando with, like, he hides his lines on the set and reads them off of this famous scene of him with Duvall. It's got like a what do you call those? You know, he's got a board. Robert Duvall is wearing a board with Brando's lines on it in The Godfather, because he wants to be in the moment. He wants to find. It's like, I can't do that.
No.
I want to be 1,000,000% off book.
Yeah.
Because then I can think about something else.
Yeah. Let me know my words, and then I'll react how you're supposed to.
If I don't, for me, for acting and for stand-up just as well, of like, I don't want to have to think about the words at all.
Yeah.
Because then I can think about something else, and then you have an inner life and all that stuff, and, you know, it just works better for me. But everyone has their own process.
Yeah, have them be locked and loaded, and then I can improvise if I need to.
Yeah,
do something.
much so. Yes, I mean, because then especially with stand-up, like, I have my lines. Oh, that's somebody. Oh, that's not true. You got to deal with that, and then not get lost before you get back somehow and all that. So yeah, I do a lot of rehearsal.
Work on all those transitions.
Yeah.
And so, before we get you out of here,
I feel like I've been rambling on like a crazy person.
No, you're totally fine. What is next for you? What do you have that you're working on that you're excited for?
I kind of figured you would probably ask me something like that. I've sort of been dreading that question.
You know, it doesn't have to be anything specific. It's more like, what are you excited for? What you're doing?
Yeah, so I started producing a stand-up show here in Reno. We've done 2 of them. I didn't book anything for September because I was like, well, not that I think I'm going to win the San Francisco thing, but it's potentially 4 weeks long. Yeah. So it's like, I can't book anything. And now, you know, I did my 1 week. But so I have October and December booked. October's 2 great comics from LA that just did Edinburgh Fringe Festival, sold out. Okay. So like, they've just done their sets, you know, 30 times in a row. They're gonna be ready to rock. Yeah. And a guy named Matt Knutson, who is a comic and an actor, and I don't know, you watch Shrinking. He was one of the patients on Shrinking. He did a few episodes. He's one of those guys. He's sort of done an episode of everything, but he's a stand-up as well. He's going to come up and do his show in December, so that'll be cool. Nice. So that's really what I'm looking at. I have lots of ideas for films and all that stuff. I sort of have stopped talking about those in sort of specific terms, because I don't say ideas are worthless, but ideas without plans of action to execute them kind of are. And
they're more just words.
I've talked about them, and whether it's a super clever idea or it's a rom-com, old high school sweethearts that meet up again, like whatever, whether it's played out, it's just, well, what's the execution? If you execute it well, it'll be good. You know, I mean, coming off Cordillera, the film festival here recently, like I've seen really, really, really good films there that are not particularly clever or unique or surprising, but they're acted well, they're shot well, they're scored well, and all that stuff. And so, I think the execution of the idea is the thing. So I would hope to execute on some of those, but I try not to talk about it because then I just depress myself.
Yeah, like you can have the same cut of meat as everybody else, but everyone seasons them a little differently.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. I mean, it's and I think I do get too wrapped up in like, oh, that's a brilliant idea. First of all, is it?
Yeah.
And second of all, like, so what?
Yeah.
You know, did you finish the script?
Mm-hmm.
You know, if not, then who cares?
What else can we do with this?
Yeah.
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 Well,
So.
Aaron, I want to say thank you for coming in and being back on the show, now this time with video.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Before we do get you out of here, go ahead and promote socials, anything, wherever you want people to find you, follow.
Yeah, sure.
Like
So,
that.
I'm Aaron Charles Foster on Instagram, and then my comedy stuff is I'm currently calling it funnywordsinreno.com. Funny Words in Reno is on Instagram as well. There's not a lot of posts, there's not a lot of info, but that's where you can buy tickets and find out, who's coming and all that stuff. And we've had 2 great shows, sold out, and brought these great comics up from LA for both of them. That, the first one, Heather, she's been on Colbert. Like, no disrespect, Heather, I love you, you know that. But like, probably not anyone somebody's heard of, especially up here.
Sure.
But works all the time, headlines all around the country and stuff. And she had a ball, and it was great. And then my friend Vargas Mason, who's one of the first guys I met in comedy, came out a couple weeks ago, and just, people were like, it's just not something you get in Reno a lot, right? You get the headliners at the casinos, the big names.
Yeah.
And then, and the don't tell shows are great. But there's just not that many options. And so, because I'm not doing that for money, we sell at that theater. I can fly somebody up, put them in a hotel, and pay them pretty decently.
Yeah.
And even if they've been doing it forever, in LA, I don't know, they might get $50 to do their spots. They come up, they do 45 minutes. And so they're super happy to be here. The crowds have been great. So it's been really fun. I'm hoping to kind of keep the momentum going on that. So anyway, funnywordsinreno.com, or that's the Instagram handle as well. And that's the thing.
Great. Well, Aaron, thanks again. I appreciate you
pleasure.
coming on.
Thanks.
You guys know what to do for us over here. Stephen Longley for me, Longley's Line for the show, Light Style Studio for the studio here. We'll talk to you guys next week.